Alrighty, so before I start this review, I just want to say that one thing I already noticed about this hotel that I'm staying is that the internet is not the best. I mean, when I upload my video last night, it takes about an hour and a half before it uploaded. I had to literally wait until 3 in the morning until the video is uploaded. So yeah, that is definitely going to be a bit of an issue, and this is also kind of the reason why maybe I should speed up in terms of doing these reviews, so that, you know, the longer the review is, the bigger the size is, and the longer, of course, it will take to do the upload. But with that being said, let us begin by talking about these rest of the game as we're going to finish up. First, looking at the rest of the Saturday night game. Beginning with the first one, which is Chicago versus DC United. So, like I said yesterday, the theme of this week is late goals. I mean, there was a lot of late goals drama this week. This was definitely one of them. In fact, this game had some late drama, at least in the last 10 minutes, where all the goals were actually scored in the last 10 minutes of this game. In the first half, Baribo with the game's first shot, but he puts it high before Kuipers with the Fire's first shot, but he missed high in the 9th minute. Not much really happened, at least in the first 20 minutes. The shot were one apiece for both of these teams. Baribo then had a shot that was curled wide from close range before Kuipers missed wide from close in the 32nd. Baribo then looked like he got the opener for DC United, but they go to VAR to see whether or not if Hopkins did interfere with the goalkeeper and was in an offside position. He was. So yeah, that goal, of course, would be chopped off. Won't be the only time we'll talk about in this review where a goal is being chopped off because a player found himself in an offside position and impeding the goalkeeper view of sight. But in the 6-minute stoppage time, we had Brady denying, or I'm sorry, not Brady, Johnson denying Bamba from close in the 6-minute stoppage time. Got the wrong goalkeeper there for a second, but there was no doubt that Chicago was pressing late to get the opener. Keep in mind there was a long stoppage time because of that VAR look earlier. Ziganago would then puts it wide from close, but we do head to halftime with the game still scoreless between both of these teams. In the second half, not much really happened, at least in the start of the second half either. Baruso would hit the side netting in the 62nd minute before Brady denied Peglo from close. Both of these teams definitely getting some good chances though, but the question is who can get that opening goal. Bamba tried to do so in the 68th, but he puts it over from long range before Saletro would miss wide from the corner in the 72nd minute. The Fire were definitely having some sustained pressure, and now seems like they're the one that looked to get the opening goal. And they would, because a penalty was given to the Fire after this time VAR deemed Hopkins handballed this one in the box. So this was a rough game for Jackson Hopkins. First, he was in the line of sight when it comes to disallowing his team a goal in the first half, and now he commits a handball offense. So here comes Hugo Kuipers, a chance to buries it. He usually does not miss from the spot, and he doesn't here. He buries this one to give the Fire a 1-0 lead. That lead only lasted 3 minutes because in the 84th minute, Pautelo would score to tie the game up at 1 apiece. This was a shot that took a wicket deflection and goes in, so a little fortuitously there from DC United, but just like that, the game was tied up at 1 apiece. But then 5 minutes later, a penalty was given to DC, as once again we would go to VAR. There was a lot of VAR look in this one, and that it deemed that Dean did handball this one in the box. So you know what that say? VAR taken, VAR given for DC United, or it should be the other way around, where VAR are given, VAR taken, at least if you're in a Chicago Fire perspective. So here comes Baribo, who of course got his goal disallowed in the first half, looking to score the winning goal in this one, and he does exactly that from the penalty spot. So yeah, in the end, DC, they win 2-1 in this one. A bit of a wild last 10 minutes off this game, as well as the shots in this one, 16 shots compared to 11 that DC had, 3 shots on goal compared to 2 that Chicago has, 6 shots off target but 3 that DC had, 4 shots that was blocked compared to 7 that the Fire has. And possession-wise, the Fire has more of the possession, 64% possession compared to 36% possession that DC has in this game. And the Fire will definitely be kicking themselves in this one, because I thought they were the better team for most part of this game. But yeah, you know, giving up those 2 late goals is definitely going to hurt, especially when you are the home team itself. Now, moving on, in terms of the next match, is another game that feature a late goal, though this one not as late as what we saw in the first half, or in the first game, that is, where it happened been in stoppage time. This one happened just a couple of minutes before we head to stoppage time, but it was a well-deserved goal too, because this was a game where RSL pretty much dominated for most part of it. It looked like you were thinking, is this going to be one of those nights again? We've seen before where RSL, they put a lot of shots on their opponent, put a lot of chances, not being able to bear it at home, but in the end they were able to just about do it. do it in this one. Now in the first half, Gozo would head it wide from the corner as RSL definitely were on the front foot early, pushing to get the opener, but instead it's Austin the one that gets the opener as the first shot of the game for Austin is in the back of net. It's John Bell scoring his first goal for Austin from Torres to make it 1-0 in favor of Los Verdes. Unfortunately, that goal didn't last, or that lead didn't last long because in the 24th minute, Swatok would basically score an own goal here. Yeah, it's just one of those unfortunate ones when the ball comes into the box, and when you're a defender, you got to make sure you clear that one away cleanly, because if you don't, you can basically misclear it and hit it into your own net, and that's kind of the case there with Swatok there. He completely hit the clearance there. It goes into his own net. So yeah, just like that, the parity was restored. It was all tied up at 1 apiece. Dylan did look for the lead for RSL, but he was denied by Stuver before Hezekani would hit one right to Stuver in the 31st minute. The momentum was definitely back with RSL. Now they were pressing hard to get the lead. Stuver would deny Gozo from close before Cabral would deny Uzuni, but RSL didn't clear this one, and Torres had a chance to punish them because of it, but Cabral was there to rob him there in the back post. So yeah, a little sigh of relief for that RSL back line. They must be thanking Cabral there, because that would have been a big mistake of them not clearing their lines. But there was no doubt that Austin started to show some life. They really didn't have too much going in this game, but they show some life up to this point, weather the RSL storm and the pressure, and now we're looking to try to get the lead for the first time. Though on the other end, Stuver would deny Guavigi on the doorstep of goal, and then Quinton would head this one high from close from the corner. And yeah, we do head to halftime tied up at 1 apiece, despite the fact that RSL had a lot of pressure. In the second half, Engel would head it wide from close as RSL once again on the front foot, looking to try to get the lead again. Gulavegi would hit it right to Stuver, and then Stuver was just an incredible double save here, both time robbing Solans there. Sanabria had a third opportunity that was put wide, but here we go again. It's the Brad Stuver show. We've seen this before, where the Austin netminder, there's a reason why he was named the All-Star last year and the guy that was in contention for goalkeeper of the year, because man, oh man, he was looking to steal one again for Austin in this one. Rosales would then struck the post on the curler, but then it was recycled. Elia had a chance there from long range, but he puts it over the stands. Ingo would then miss wide from long range in the 72nd minute. You kind of had a sense the game maybe started to be up for grabs a bit. It was kind of on a knife edge. The question is, who can get that second goal? Luna had a chance to do so in the 87th minute, but his shot was clear off the line. But then just a couple of seconds later, RSL finally got that deserved the second goal. And it's Steven Sperring, his first career MLS goal there, and what a time to do so, and especially an absolute banger too. That is definitely in contention for goal of the week, as he scored from Glad and Luna to give RSL the lead, and they would keep the lead for good as they win 2-1 in this one. The shots in this one, 24 shots compared to 10 that Austin had, 8 shots on goal compared to the 3 that Austin has. Yeah, it's safe to say that Brad Stuver was really one of the big reasons why this game was stayed tied for as long as it did. 6 shots off target compared to 2 that Austin has, 4 shots that was blocked compared to 9 that RSL had, and possession-wise, 57% possession compared to the 43% possession that Austin has in this game. So yeah, for RSL, the kids are still doing all right. I mean, the kids are definitely performing well to a point where, yeah, this has definitely been one of the more surprising packages this season. I thought RSL was going to be in for a rebuilding year. I didn't think they were going to have a great season, at least in the beginning, especially starting all these kids again. But yeah, the kids are definitely doing all right, and although they were kind of frustrated for most part of this game, they got it done in the end in this one against Austin. Now, moving on into the next game, now let's talk about the two LA teams, starting off with the Galaxy versus Sporting KC. So this game was very similar to the RSL versus Austin game, where the home team had more of the chances. However, unlike how RSL eventually were able to take advantage of the chances and get the win, the Galaxy didn't in this one, and they pay a heavy price as a result. But early on, the Galaxy was on the front foot. Not much chances, though, I would say that really troubled Postcamp early in this one. In fact, the shots were only 2-0 early for the Galaxy. Tommy would then puts it high from long range before Royce would head it over the bar in the 21st minute. Miller then had a long range effort that was actually spilled by Postcamp, but he wasn't punished as he was able to gather on the second attempt. There was no doubt the Galaxy was started to put some real dangerous chances, looking to try to get the opener. However, in the 39th minute, Klaus tried to chip the goalkeeper there from the halfway line, so he was trying to do a little triangle Triantis there. Didn't quite work out there. Or is it an Origin? No, as we call it. I mean, Oriano obviously is no longer in this league, so I guess maybe I should now call it a Triantis, because Triantis was the last guy to able to score from the halfway line against San Diego last season. But in the 40th minute, postgame with denying Klaus after Sporting turned the ball over in a bad spot. Yeah, it's safe to say that João Klaus, his snake bin goal scoring curse that he had in the last game against Mount Pleasant, has carried into tonight, just not able to be clinical in front of goal. Hack would then miss wide from close in the 43rd minute before Mikovic denied Jovalic, as that was Sporting's first shot of the game. I mean, SKC, they were under immense pressure in the first half. However, in the second minute of salvage time, on only the second shot of the game for Sporting KC, it's in the back of the net, and it's one of the former Galaxy player, Dejan Jovalic, come back to haunt his whole team here as he scored from Garcia and Johnson to make it 1-0 in favor of Sporting KC. And obviously he didn't celebrate against his former team. I had a feeling that was the case, because I'm pretty sure a lot of Galaxy fans still love Jovalic, and it's kind of unfortunate in terms of the fact that they had to let him go because of that cap situation that they dealt after winning that MLS Cup. And there's no doubt that Galaxy fans will always remember as Dejan Jovalic is the guy that sent them to MLS Cup with that winning goal against Seattle a couple of years in the Western Conference Final. So, yeah, up to this point, it was 1-0 in favor of Sporting KC, and that would be the scoreline, despite the fact that when you look at the shots and the chances that was created, I mean, the Galaxy was definitely leading that in terms of the SG as well. In the second half, Miller would then puts it wide from close before Klaus would heads it wide from close in the 55th minute. Galaxy once again pressed early to try to now get the equalizer. Yoshida would then heads it over from close before Jovalic had another rare opportunity for Sporting, trying to get his second goal of the game, but he was denied by Mikovic. But then just 1 minute later, just like how in the first half, after Sporting KC finally got a shot attempt after a very long time, the second attempt that they had, it's in the back of the net, and it's Lars Johnson scoring his first career MLS goal, a guy that they just picked up not long ago for Sporting KC. He scored from a Frifa and Jovalic to make it 2-0 in this one, and yeah, it was the first career MLS goal that he scored, and really just against the run of play, just like the first one as well, where the Galaxy were looking, threatening to get the equalizer, and now they found themselves 2-0 down. Though they do get one back, the Galaxy in the 82nd minute, as Marco Reus would score here, and this was a really chaotic sequence. I mean, in this sequence, the Galaxy actually hit the post twice. There was a couple of big saves from post-scam, but eventually Reus was able to bury it because Sporting KC couldn't clear their lines, and when you couldn't clear your lines, more times or not, you're going to pay the price, and they definitely paid the price as a result. Hack did look for the equalizer, but he heads it wide from the corner. Galaxy was pressing hard late to get the equalizer. Sporting KC was just holding on for dear life to trying to get the first win for Rafael Wiki, and they did exactly that. They just about hold on to get the big 2-1 win in this one, the first win under Rafael Wiki as well. Shots in this one, 17 shots for the 7 that Sporting KC had, 4 shots on goal for the 5 that the Galaxy had, 5 shots that was off target for the 1 that Sporting KC had, 2 shots that was blocked for the 3 that the Galaxy had, and possession-wise, 57% possession compared to the 43% possession that Sporting KC has in this game. And while I say before that, these kind of resort is something that is kind of unsustainable if you get a win and kind of steal one like Sporting KC has, I don't think that's really what really matters for them. What really matters for them is that they need to look respectable throughout the season, and really for the first couple of games, I think Sporting KC has looked respectable. I mean, obviously they're not going to make the playoffs. The quality is definitely nowhere near a level to be a playoff contender, but they're definitely a team that is giving some teams things to think about, and that I think when you look at how they play, I mean, I say all the games that they play, minus the first game of the season against the San Jose Earthquakes. That one was pretty bad for them, but the rest of the game, they have looked respectable, and they finally got a much-deserved win in this one. But for the Galaxy, I mean, yeah, this was not a great result for them whatsoever, and finishing has been a problem for the Galaxy. We saw it in the last game against Mount Pleasant. We're seeing it again in this one, and it comes back to be costly in this one as well. Now, moving on into the last game of Saturday. Now we look at the other LA team, that is LAFC versus St. Louis, and it took a while for LAFC to finally get the breakthrough, but I gotta say, for St. Louis, again, just like Sporting KC, I think St. Louis has been playing pretty well. I don't think their record is an indictment in terms of how they've been playing. And like Sporting KC, St. Louis is another team that's kind of going for a bit of a rebuilding process, and I know that some St. Louis fans really want this team to excel immediately after these 2 poor seasons. But remember, this is still a big work in progress when it comes to the construction of the roster, and there's no doubt that I think we know as we get into the summer transfer window, or maybe for the remaining of this primary transfer window, which I think it's going to close relatively soon. We know what Corey Ray needs to do during the next transfer window. He has to get some attacking threat, because it's pretty clear that this team has done everything right. At least in this game against LAFC, I think they've done everything right in this one. It's just that they don't have the goal scorer on this team to get the big resort over the hill. Now in the first half, Bouanga hits it over after just 30 seconds into this game before Wallen puts it over from close in the 6th minute. It was a lively start to this game as both of these teams was pushing for the opener. Betcher puts it over from the crossbar before Orozco heads it high from the corner. Teuscher then puts it right to Lloris in the 34th minute. St. Louis definitely has done well, but again, the story of this season, they just aren't able to put away these chances when they are given. Berkey would then deny Bouanga, but it then falls to Delgado, who puts it over on the volley, and then Ordaz, which struck the post from close in the 41st minute. And this is what happened when you don't put away your chances, St. Louis, because now LAFC has started to ramp up the pressure and look to try to get the opener. It's also important to note that LAFC, they did put some starters in this game as well, but it wasn't really the strongest team, I think, that they put out in this game against St. Louis. But we head to halftime with this game scoreless, and it's not surprised that LAFC didn't put most of their starter, because like many of these teams that play in the CONCACAF Champions Cup in the middle of the week, a lot of these teams are kind of almost punting this game to really focus for the midweek game. But we do go to halftime with the score scoreless, as I said. Second half, LAFC definitely had more of the possession, but the problem is they just couldn't quite break down this St. Louis team, which are at that point was actually doing very well defensively. Hartel then puts it over from close before Cordova heads it high from the corner in the 63rd minute. Once again, St. Louis getting some chances, and once again, they just couldn't quite find that clinical finishing. Betcher then puts it wide from long range. The shots were actually 12-8 in favor of St. Louis, 73 minutes in. So again, they're getting the chances, but as we talked about in the last game, when you don't put away your chances, especially when you're the heavy underdog, it's going to come back to bite you, because in the 73rd minute, LAFC finally fought the opener as Matteo Schreiner would score an absolute banger here. Definitely a goal of the week contention. In fact, he has 2 goals in this game that was pretty much almost a carbon copy of each other that could be in goal of the week contention. But it was also kind of came off of a bad giveaway from St. Louis. Yeah, you just can't do that against LAFC, turning the ball over badly in your own box, and that come back to bite them. Beaudry then hits it right to Lloris. The momentum was definitely with LAFC. They were definitely bombs away from outside the range. They were not afraid to shoot from long range there. Berkey would deny Boyd from long range, and then in the 81st minute, like I said, a carbon copy goal that Schreiner scored in the 73rd minute. This was pretty much the same thing in the 81st minute, and you just kind of have to ask, if you're St. Louis, you've seen LAFC kind of shooting from range. I know some people might say these are kind of low percentage shots, but if these shots are getting close, which it was throughout these last 10 minutes, you're thinking eventually that defense got to do a better job closing down, right? I mean, you just saw him score earlier in this game. You probably might need to close him down even more, but apparently that's not the memo that the St. Louis defense have. They kind of give Schreiner another chance to shoot from long range, and he made them pay again in this one. So yeah, it was 2-0 in favor of LAFC. Hartel did look to respond, but he hits it right to Lloris before the post would deny Bouanga and LAFC for the second time tonight. Yeah, Bouanga was a little bit snake bin tonight in front of goal. Lloris would then deny McSorley off of the deflection, and then he hits it right to Lloris from long range in the first minute of stoppage time. But yeah, in the end, it wasn't pretty, but LAFC does get the win. They now are 4-0-0 to start the season. They're one of 2 teams that start the season 4-0-0. We'll talk about the other team in the other board in just a bit. But yeah, even though it wasn't pretty, they'll definitely take it using the momentum. Maybe that will help them to get a pretty much almost a win situation against Alajuelense. I mean, there is a world where they don't actually have to beat Alajuelense to move on to the next round, as long as they get more than a 1-1 draw. If they get like a 2-2 draw and beyond, they will move on into the next round. And obviously, they win against Alajuelense on the road. They will move on into the next round, but they'll need all the momentum that they needed after, they were a little bit rusty, at least in the first leg, especially when it comes to the finishing department. And like I said, for St. Louis, this was definitely not a bad game for St. Louis. I think St. Louis played a really good game in this one, but again, it is pretty clear that Corey Ray's got to figure out where he can go into the transfer market to find some proven goal scorer and some clinical finisher as well, because this team clearly does not have that right now, and that's kind of the reason why they're where they are right now in the standings. But that being said, I am now going to erase this board and put down the resort for the next game, as we now going to look at the Sunday game to finish up the review of match week number 4. Alright, so now let's talk about the Sunday game, and boy oh boy, this Sunday game, it was really blowout Sunday, because these first two games, let's just say that, it was not close whatsoever, and yes, unfortunately, we have to get to this game in just a bit. But let's talk about the first of the game that turns out to be a blowout, which is Cincinnati versus the New England Revolution. So the Revs, just like the Houston Dynamo, had 2 weeks to kind of dwell on, because their previous game was postponed because of weather. And these 2 weeks, for Marko Mitrovic, it couldn't come at a better time, because after the first 2 games of the season, let's just say New England definitely did not get off to a great start, and whatever Mitrovic did in terms of planning throughout these 2 weeks has definitely helped big time for the New England Revolution, because they look like day and night a complete different team in this one against Cincinnati compared to what we saw them in the first 2 games. So much so that this was a record-breaking day for the New England Revolution as well. In the first half, the first shot of the game did see Evander hits it right to Turner before Heelwood puts it high from long range. But then the 19th minute, believe it or not, Cincinnati actually took the lead in this one. It's hard to believe that at one point Cincinnati actually had this lead. It's Valenzuela, the one that scored from Evander to give Cincinnati a 1-0 lead. But that lead only lasted 6 minutes, because in the 25th minute, Ceballos would score from Ligoni to make it 1-1 in this game as well. A little ahead of myself, that is. They would eventually make it 2-1, as after Evander looked to respond, but he hits it right to Turner. They do make it 2-1 in the 31st minute, as Dor Turgerman scored his first goal of 2026 from Langoni and fine goal to make it 2-1 in this one. Sands did look for another, but he hits this one wide. The momentum was definitely with New England up to this point. They were pressing hard to try to get another. Turner would deny Jabari from close before Salentano would deny Heel from long range, but then the 3rd minute of stoppage time, Ceballos would make it 3-1. So he scored here from Langoni to make it 3-1, and this is just always the worst possible time if you're a defensive team to concede right on the stroke of halftime. But New England, they would say that this would be the best time to do so, as now they head into the second half with this 3-1 lead. Now remember, this is a game that Cincinnati didn't play their best players, so you could definitely make that as a little asterisk in terms of the fact how the performance is from New England. But when you cannot make an asterisk is the fact that they brought the starter in the second half, and it was pretty much the same, because after Barlow, Echenike, and Denke was summoned in for Cincinnati, it didn't matter. New England continued to score. In the 53rd minute, it's Yusuf, the ones now joining the goal-scoring party for New England, as that makes it 4-1 in favor of the Revs. Salentano did make the save on Carlos Heel, but Yusuf was just there in the right place in the right time to head this one in. Heel had an incredible game in this one. This felt like vintage Carlos Heel kind of performance that we saw in this one. And then it just gets from bad to worse for Cincinnati, as Valenzuela got himself a straight red here after his challenge on fine goal is worth a red. Though Barlow did have a shot that was clear off the line in the 75th minute, and then Evander puts it high from long range. So despite the fact that Cincinnati were down to 10 men, I mean, they were actually looking a little bit better, which, that's kind of always the thing that people don't understand. Just because you're up a man, that doesn't always mean that the team with a man advantage always seems to be the better team. Now, we have seen before this season that, of course, is the case, but more times or not, that team maybe become a little bit more complacent, and that's where the 10 men can take advantage of that complacency. But in the 85th minute, Yao would miss wide from close, but in the 87th minute, he would not miss here, as he scored his first goal for New England to make it 5-1 in this one. And New England wasn't done, because just 2 minutes later, they would break the record for the most goal they have ever scored in a game. It's hard to believe they actually never scored 6 goals in this one. I mean, with the way that they've been in the league for a very long time, I would have assumed at one point they scored more than 5 goals. But this is the first time that they've scored 6 goals in an MLS game, and it belongs to Peyton Miller. He scored from Turgerman and Fagundes to make it 6-1 in this one. Fagundes, of course, got a huge applause when he came in, and a huge ovation as well, especially with the way that he's coming back to the place where his career started. And yeah, he can even contribute on the goal scoring chart here, getting the secondary assist. But yeah, in the end, 6-1 was the final score in this one. The shots in this one, 16 shots compared to 15 that Cincinnati has. So it was actually a little bit even, but it was just a point where New England was just absolutely clinical in front of goal. 10 shots on goal for the 9 that Cincinnati has. 2 shots off target for the 3 that New England has. 3 shots that was off target for the 2 that Cincinnati has. 5 shots that was blocked for the 4 that New England has. And possession-wise, 56% possession compared to 44% possession that Cincinnati has in this game. Easily the worst loss that Cincinnati has ever had under the Pat Nolan era, and actually not the worst loss that they've ever suffered in franchise history. The worst loss is still the 7-1 beatdown that they suffered against Minnesota a couple of years back at Allianz. But yeah, I mean, whether they put the starter in or not, they weren't winning this game against New England. New England, it just feels like I said, whatever Marko Vicevic tried to plan this team doing this 2-week break, it has definitely worked out to a treat, because like I said, this team looks completely day and night compared to what we saw in the first 2 games of the season. There's definitely some life in this team finally. And for Cincinnati, I mean, again, you just hope that this is just maybe an outlier. It is a very long time since we've seen a Pat Nolan team getting absolutely destroyed like they do. And this is also maybe due to the fact that, that big win that they had against Tigres. Again, how many times we said when a team get a huge win, an emotional win like Cincinnati did against Tigres, how much of a letdown that's going to be in the very next game, especially back in league play. And let's just say that letdown was huge for Cincinnati, and they better hope that this is not going to continue for them heading in the middle of the week, because they can't put up this kind of performance against Tigres and expect them to still able to hold on to that 3-0 advantage heading into the second leg. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but again, I mean, this is why I don't think that two-leg affair is decided, and this is where they got to be very careful, because just because they have a commanding 3-0 lead, going to Alvocon is a different animal. Tigres has known to get some big comebacks before, and I'm pretty sure if Tigres probably saw this performance, they're probably licking their chops saying, there is definitely a legitimate chance that we can definitely overcome this 3-0 deficit that we have to face heading into the second leg. Now, moving on into the next game, and unfortunately we have to talk about this game. Yeesh, this was ugly. I mean, I talk about Cincinnati having probably the worst game under Pat Nolan. This arguably might be the worst game I've ever seen Minnesota United as play. And I've seen some bad ones over the year. I mean, the first 2 years, there were some brutal resort. The snow opener is definitely one of them that comes up to mind when they lost 6-1 against Atlanta United. But yeah, I mean, this game was just a combination of Minnesota decided to not show up whatsoever in this game, and against a Vancouver team that you knew they were angry coming out of that 3-0 loss against Seattle. This team definitely play like they have something to prove, and yeah, they definitely they send a message to not only the rest of the league, but maybe even the Seattle Sounders itself, is that if you decided to poke the bear, yeah, we are going to bite back ferociously. Now in the first half, Jackson puts it over from close before a penalty was given to Vancouver after Batwell was brought down by Duncan in the box, which allowed Berhalter a chance to bury from the spot. He doesn't usually miss from the spot, and he doesn't here, so he buries it to make it 1-0 in favor of Vancouver. By the way, they built this game up as the game between Thomas Muller versus James Rodriguez. Only one of those players actually playing in this one, so yeah, that must be a bit of a letdown for the people that promote this game as a huge matchup, though I don't think it's as much of a letdown in terms of what Minnesota did in this one. I mean, I'll talk about in just a bit how concerning it has to be after this resort. But in the 13th minute, it would be 2-0 in favor of Vancouver. White would score from Sabi and Berhalter to make it 2-0. Safe to say that Vancouver, they're angry coming out of this game, and the Loons clearly has not showed up whatsoever up to this point. The post would deny Batwell from close, and then the 22nd minute, it would be 3-0 in favor of Vancouver. Laborda would make it 3-0 in this one. Batwell did look for 4, but he was denied by counter, and 36 minutes in, The Loons still have not show up in this game. Spoiler alert, they would not show up pretty much in this entire game whatsoever. The Post would deny Triandis, as that was Minnesota's first shot of the game, but then the 43rd minute, it would be 4-0, as Emmanuel Sabbi would score from Berhalter to make it 4-0 in this one, and I even wrote, this is arguably the worst first half I've ever seen from the Loons. Probably arguably the worst half I've ever seen Minnesota have played. Some might argue, that 6-2 result in the playoffs, that second half that the Loons have was relatively rough. But keep in mind, the Loons were down to 10 men in that game. So, yeah, this was a little bit different. This was just, I was kind of speechless in terms of watching this. And, up to this point, I still kind of had to watch it because obviously I still have to do the review. But I do not blame any Minnesota fans decided to turn the TV off. I don't even blame them after 22 minutes when this team was down 3-0 in this game. But Delford did look to respond, but he was denied by Takaoka, and we do head to halftime with Vancouver absolutely in control of this one. 4-0 up, and they weren't done because, like I said, they were angry in this one. They were showing no mercy to their opposition, and in the second half, Minnesota decided to go with so-called reinforcement with Lonwane and Taylor both being summoned up, and I say it's so-called because, yeah, it did not work whatsoever. Triantis would then miss wide from long range, but then a penalty was given to Vancouver again after DJ Taylor, one of those so-called reinforcement, would bring down Jackson in the box. So here comes White, a chance to bury it to make it 5-0, and he does exactly that. So 5-0 in favor of Vancouver. Berhalter would then miss wide from close range. The Whitecaps, they were not stopping. Like I said, this team is angry. They want to let all the steam off after that defeat on Thursday into Minnesota in this one. On the other end, though, Takaoka did deny Diaz from the corner before James Rodriguez finally made his debut with the Loons. I wasn't expecting him to make a debut when this team was down 5-0. I feel like that's kind of the ultimate irony coming into this one, but hey, he finally made his debut. There was definitely some mix of boos and cheers. Obviously, there were a lot of Colombian fans in the crowd. They were very eager to finally see him play for the very first time. Probably not expecting his team be 5-0 down up to this point, but also there was definitely boos, especially from the South Sider. A lot of Whitecaps fans probably were booing, thinking that they were going to see Thomas Muller in this one, which unfortunately they didn't get a chance to do so. Takaoka would then deny Yeboah from close in the 69th minute, but then the 74th minute, Sabali would score his first career MLS goal from Laporta and Cubas to make it 6-0 up to this point. The good news is mercy has finally been shown in this one. I think 6 was probably the line where Vancouver draw because, the Whitecaps did kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit. And this is kind of where I just kind of stopped taking notes because, yeah, there was really no point taking notes talking about this game. So I definitely did miss some chances that Minnesota has. It didn't really matter. I mean, this game was pretty much over after 22 minutes. Diaz would then heads it right to Takaoka, and yeah, in the end, 6-0 is the final score in this one. I mean, I'm pretty sure Vancouver saw what New England did, and they said, hold my beer, I can do one better. I can even get a shutout coming out of this one. Shots in this one, 16 shots compared to 9 that Minnesota has, 4 shots on goal for the 8 that Vancouver has, 4 shots off target for the 1 that Minnesota has, 3 shots that was blocked for the 2 that Vancouver has, and possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession that Minnesota has in this game. And I already can hear that, some people will say, well, this is just one game. This maybe is just one of those games where nothing goes right with a team, and that couldn't be more true in terms of what Minnesota did in this one. And I also have said before that, throughout this beginning of the stretch of schedule, I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota come off the gate slow because they have to face against these tough opponent, and alas, that of course is the case. But as I said before, in terms of my concern level with this team, I think it's pretty high. I mean, again, I know that they have a really tough start to the season, but there's one thing to be going into a game where when you face against a tough opponent and you lose a game, but you put up a bit of a fight, which I always say this, when I see my team play against the opposition and I see them put up some sort of fight even on a losing effort, I'm not going to be that upset because, I definitely know that my team definitely put up a fight being the underdog, but they just aren't able to have the quality. I can't say that about this game. I mean, this team just, to say that they didn't show up in this game is just an understatement. This game has to not only drive Cam Nola's crazy, but they better have a big response against Seattle next week, because this is kind of concerning. This is kind of how things are, and especially, even going back to the last game against Nashville, they didn't play well in that game either. And I also would say that the loss of Michael Boxall, not only it's huge to this team, but I think it's now safe to say that the real reason why Minnesota was so good defensively last season isn't just because of the fact that Aaron Ramsey decided to go very defensively, but also the fact that the presence of Michael Boxall and that leadership and that communication skill that's been missing these last 2 games, it is sorely missed with this team, because in these last 2 games, they have given up 9 goals in the last 2 games without Michael Boxall. That is definitely alarming, and that makes me even more concerning. The fact that, Michael Boxall is not an infinite kind of a player where he's going to be there for a very long time. I think he probably have maybe a year or 2 left in the tank, and if they don't find a proper replacement, this could be something a regular occurrence that we might see with Minnesota, at least on the defensive end. It's kind of giving me some bad vibes in terms of what we saw in the first 2 seasons, where, the first 2 seasons, let's just say, that defense was kind of like the defense that we saw in this game against Vancouver. Pretty much non-existent whatsoever. But now, moving on into the last game on the board. So this was definitely not a great week for me, because both of my team actually lost. But as I said before, I don't mind when my team are going to come in as the underdog, which, I know the Quakes are unbeaten, and you would think that they shouldn't be the underdog, but I do think that they kind of still are against a really good Seattle team, especially coming off of that big win against Vancouver. And I always say that I don't mind when if my team show up a good effort and put up a good fight, but they kind of come up short. And that's kind of the case with the Quakes in this one, because that, unlike where Minnesota clearly didn't show up whatsoever in this game, the Quakes definitely did. And it's just kind of very unfortunate, the fact that they ran into a Seattle back line that was pretty much having one of the best games I've seen a defensive back line has ever had, and especially on Andrew Thomas. He was not allowing a goal in this game. Now, in the first half, the first shot of the game did see Baker miss wide from 18 yards out. Not much happened, at least early in this one. The shots were 1 apiece 15 minutes in. Werner would then puts it high on the free kick, but then the 20th minute, Seattle would score the first goal of the game, and the first time that the Quakes concede this season, as Paul Vrafrock would score from Fiera and Wisławski to make it 1-0 in favor of the Sounders. It came over a lightning counterattack as well, and that pretty much ends the Quakes, who almost had 300 minutes without conceding a goal to start the season. Pekovic would then hits it right to Daniel in the 26th minute. The Quakes were definitely having trouble dealing with transition. The Sounders' transition was absolutely lethal up to this point. Vieira would then hits it high from long range before Pekovic just puts it high from long range. Vieira would then hits it right to Thomas in the 38th minute. The Quakes definitely started to put some sustained pressure, but the problem is that they can't really get that finishing that they need, and especially they're running into a Sounders back line that was doing everything to make sure not concede any big chances. The post would then deny Jacaris in the 43rd minute, but we do head to halftime with the Sounders leading 1-0 in this game. In the second half, LaRue would miss wide from close. Daniel would then deny Rothrock on the other end before Buda would heads it heads it right to Thomas in the 51st minute, as both of these teams were definitely exchanging some chances, but who can get that crucial next goal? Well, the Quakes almost did so in the 60th minute. This was a chaotic sequence where one of the Sounders players actually almost scored an own goal here, and Thomas had to deal with this one, but then it kind of was up for grabs, and the Quakes just could not quite put this one in. And like I said, the Quakes, they continue to get that level, but the question is that can they finally break through against this very well organized Sounders back line, who has passed all the tough tests that they have to face defensively. And in the 74th minute, they probably passed the hardest test, because Preston Judge, he was in on goal there. He actually beat Thomas here on the shot, but somehow, in some way, just out of nowhere, Lopez just cleared this one off the line. To say that was a heroic clearance is an understatement. That was literally a definition of a goal line saving clearance there. And yeah, that moment just kind of sums up this game up to this point. That moment is kind of when I realized, the Quakes are not scoring in this one, because if that does happen to your team when you're that close to getting the equalizer, you're not going to get a goal. This Sounders backline, they were definitely up to the task and doing everything to prevent of conceding a goal here. Thomas then denied Vieira from close before he denied Chakeris from close range again. It was just wave after wave of pressure. The Sounders clearly in survival mode. They clearly started to run out of gas because of the way that they play a lot of games in these last couple of games. Judd would then head it wide off a deflection before Baker looked like he scored his first career MLS goal to put this one away. However, Rusnak was in an offside position and was on the line of shot. So, like I said earlier, in the moment where Jackson Hopkins kind of was in the line of the shot and he was in an offside position, and that kind of impeded the goalkeeper. This is basically the exact same thing. So it remains 1-0 up to this point. Quakes continue to push hard to get the equalizer. Judd had a chance in the 5th minute stoppage time, but he puts it wide from close range. But yeah, in the end, the Seattle Sounders, they survive. They get a big 1-0 win in this one, ending the Quakes' perfect run in the process. Shots in this one, 25 shots compared to 7 that Seattle has. Yeah, it's safe to say they put on a shooting gallery in favor of the Sounders. And 8 shots on goal with the 4 that the Sounders had. 6 shots off target with the 2 that the Sounders had. 11 shots that was blocked compared to none that the Sounders has in this one, and the possession 60% compared to 40% possession that the Sounders has in this game. So yeah, this is just kind of one of those games where, despite the team just absolutely dominating every single category and even in the expectancy goal as well, the Quakes, of course, unable to come up with at least a point out of this game, and probably were very unlucky to not get a point out of this. Although I say this, but I also want to remember that this is kind of something I saw a lot last season from this team, and I'm really hoping this is just kind of a one-time occurrence, because as much as I would always want to say that, if they can play like this against any other opponent, they'll probably win this one. In fact, if we have a do-over, I think the Quakes probably would have got at least a point out of this game against the Sounders with the same performance that they put in this one. But at the same time, because of what happened last season, just kind of really puts me to edge when I see these kind of thing where no matter what the Quakes do, they do everything right, but the finishing, they just kind of run into a team that just for whatever reason just have a goalkeeper that decide not to allow any goals, and just having goal line clearance like what we saw in the 74th minute happen in this one. So yeah, I am a little bit on the edge in terms of hoping that that's not a repeat as what I saw a lot last season. But at the same time, like I said, I am proud of the Quakes in terms of how they perform in this one. This performance is definitely not going to make me worry that maybe the shoe has started to drop with this team. In many ways, I feel like this team maybe is still looking like they're for real. Because if they can play like this against any other opponent, I mean, as I said, I think they would be getting at least a point or even all 3 points coming out of this game, and we'll see whether or not they can do so. But for the Seattle Sounders, what a big win this is. I mean, this is kind of one of those almost smash and grab kind of win that you usually see good teams usually do, and the Seattle Sounders is definitely a good team, and they're definitely a team that, like I said in the beginning of the season, most likely is going to be competing for multiple competition this season as well. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the review of all of these games. As always, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these review? Obviously, we got a couple of CONCACAF Champions Cup game, which means that there's going to be some late night edition that I'm going to have to do in terms of the review, because now being in the East Coast, a lot of those games are kicking off very, very late, not just in the West, but also especially in the East Coast as well. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.